Hi, my name is Frankie. Thank you for listening to my mom. I never listen.
Each week, it gets more and more fun on the Valley here. We get a chance to speak with Mary Evans, the head coach at Valpo University. Mary, so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for being with us.
Travis.
You're in a car. I'm not in the same location that I'm usually in either. What are you doing?
We're heading out to recruit. MLK weekend is a big weekend. There's a lot of tournaments around the country, and we're blessed to be really close to Ohio, and they have one of the best with the Classic in the country and Classic in the city this year. So heading out to see some young players play basketball, and looking forward to it.
One of the things that MLK taught us, and he would have been 93 years old if he was still alive, was how to be a really good servant leader. How does that manifest itself in how you lead your team and what you do with your players?
I hope that we are teaching them a lot more than just the game of basketball. I hope that they're learning how to be good people. I hope they're learning how to live a life of being grateful for the opportunities that they have presented to them. And I try to model for them that no job is too small for anyone to do, and that we're all out here just trying to achieve the same goal, and we're vessels for them, our coaching staff, to help them become better. But it's always about them, and it's always about trying to help them become the most successful players and people, and just become better humans. I hope after 40 years, and have a better outlook on life, and be thankful and feel lucky that they get to live the life that they get to live, because there are a lot of people that would love to be in their shoes, to be college athletes and to get a free education, and they need to be very thankful for that.
You said a couple of things there that are interesting to me. Free education seems to be lost in the conversation these days about what young people get to experience on a college campus. And then the pure essence of teaching and what that responsibility is. And I know you take that very seriously. Either one of those you can address.
Yeah, I think I can't believe that I'm saying that. I feel like I'm in a different generation than some of the players that I coach, but I fortunate to have met a wonderful man who was a Division III athlete, so I understand the value of a free education because he was a Division III baseball player, and that came with a lot of student loans. And so I get and understand how lucky and fortunate I was to be able to start my life off without having kind of that, some people call it change wrapped around your ankles, like pulling you down when you're having to make that payment every month out of your paycheck. And so I get that, they put in a lot of time and energy, and it's a lot of work to be a college athlete. But if you handle it correctly, you get to start off your life in a much better position than the majority of your peers. And I think that does get lost a lot. And I think it is something that is extremely valuable, for them to start being able to build wealth, and to build savings, and not just spend the first 10, 15, 20 years of their adult life paying off an education.
You and I have that in common. My husband played baseball at Columbia University, and that was an Ivy League school with no athletic scholarship. So I inherited 17 years of his debt while I had a free education. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I understand that when it comes to trying to put together your team, what are the things that you draw from on your experience or your husband's or even from your children in trying to put some tough love and some discipline and some execution and all the other things that you sprinkle in to try to make your team better?
I think I talk a lot in the recruiting process about trying to treat our players much like I would want my children being coached. And I think, as a parent, I think it's made me a much better coach. But I think you learn that you're not always loved or liked, even by your kids. Like, you have to say no sometimes, and that's hard for them to hear. And they often get frustrated and angry with you. But it's coming from a place of loving them and wanting to help and teach them um, your values. And so I think coincides as you're building your team and you're trying to build your core values. Sometimes you have to have those hard, difficult conversations, and sometimes people have to be unhappy with you, but you're trying to help them learn what the values of your program is and what the values of our university and our athletic department is. And I think it's really important, and I think I try to draw from that a lot. And I understand kids make mistakes, Everyone makes mistakes, but you have to be able to own up to things, and you have to grow and learn, and that is life. And you should never stop growing or learning, and you're never going to stop making mistakes. And being able to self-reflect and be able to have some of those difficult conversations with yourself internally and with your team on things that we need to be better at or do better at are I think really good life lessons as you grow up, and you get married and you start your own little new team, and you work with people in a setting in your career, and you've got to figure out how to work and learn and grow with those people as well. So I think it's a really neat thing for the players. And I sometimes think when you're in it, you don't understand how much you're learning until you're out of it. And then you're like, wow, I learned a lot in those 4 years about how to be a good teammate as an employee, with my employment, and also when you get married and have kids, how to be a good teammate in that part of your life as well, because you're forever part of a team.
Amen. I believe that 100%. Team Antonelli is rolling and rocking and rolling every day. So I know exactly what you mean. Okay, Mary. So now give us kind of a lay of the land. Like, where are you in the rebuilding process at Valparaiso with your program?
I think we made some great strides. Obviously the start of this year was not what we thought it would be. I challenged them, I thought, with a pretty difficult non-conference schedule. Didn't love how we reacted to it, but I think we're seeing some growth from that as the start of the conference has started. So, yeah, I think we're in a good spot right now, and I think we're starting to see some of our younger players, some of our freshmen from last year and sophomores from last year, starting to step up their game. So I think we're where we need to be, and we're moving in the right direction. And obviously, there's still a lot of games to play this season, and I'm excited about some of our young kids that are playing better basketball. I'm excited to get Carrie back off of injury, and get her inserted, back into the rotation. So I think we can. We talked a lot about not understanding why we had to kind of go through some of the COVID issues we went through and some of the injuries, and even the non-conference, but just trusting that we were going through it and it was going to make us better and it was going to make us stronger. And that's kind of been our mindset over the last couple of weeks.
You guys have had an interesting non-conference schedule. Last year, you played a really hard one as well. What's your
Yeah.
philosophy on scheduling? Because to me, the Missouri Valley is a really hard conference to win inside the league. So you might see progress not measured on the left side of the column versus
Right.
the right side.
Yeah, I think you can go one of two ways, and I've worked for coaches that like to schedule to make sure that they get to those 20 wins every year. I played for a coach at Georgia Southern that very much believed in challenging us. The SoCon when I played was a one bid league. Obviously, the Valley is not just a one bid league. I do think we're a team in a situation where it's going to take us winning um, the tournament in order to be able to be that bid. So I think you can challenge your team in that such situation. Um, to prepare them for the Valley, because it's really going to all boil down to how do you play during the course of the regular season to get yourself positioned with a good seed to put yourself in a good situation to hopefully play for a championship. And so that's been kind of the thought process since the 1920 season, where I thought we played a weaker non-conference schedule, and then I thought that first week or two in the Valley really we got smacked in the face with the physicality and the strength and the speed. And so we have made an effort the last 2 years to make sure that we play teams that will know where we're at, will know what we need to work on, and get better at prior to that first weekend in late December, early January when we break into Valley play.
So I've always said the Missouri Valley is a great coaches league. You might not get 5-star All-Americans, but you get players that really love the game, and then it's your responsibility to coach them up and put them in a scheme that you can win in the Valley. And every coach in the league is doing the same thing. How challenging is that on a night-to-night basis in the league?
I mean, it's extremely challenging. I mean, I think we've got some really good players too, and obviously our league has taken a couple of hits with some season-ending injuries this year with some of our top players, which it just breaks my heart thinking of those kids that have had that happen to them. But I think we've got great players in the league. I think we've got fantastic coaching, and I've talked to our team a lot about especially some of our newer players, our transfers. The Valley, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you finished last year. Every single game is going to be a battle, and it's going to be a grind. And I think the players that do well are the players that can really, that really love that. They kind of thrive on that. Like, you never know what's going to happen night in, night out. I got to show up and I've got to be ready to play. And, you got to grind out wins, and it's physical. And, I think we found some players that really like that. And those have been the players that have had a lot of success here.
Those are the ones that want to compete. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you get. I think in the Valley, you got to have that.
Yeah.
And speaking of competing, you and I we're ACC kids, right? I mean, I grew up in North Carolina in the Triangle. I went to NC State. I live in South Carolina. I'm in the ACC footprint.
Yep.
I love the history of the league. There's been a lot of influences in the way I see the game and the way I learned the game from coaches across the ACC over the history of men and women's basketball in the league. What's your take on the ACC, like the influences that you had when you were a young girl?
I mean, you couldn't grow up in North Carolina and not love basketball. Like, I mean, you didn't have football. It wasn't on the TV. Like, you didn't watch football as much. At least where I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, about the only football game you would get on a fall weekend was the J.P. Morgan game of the week, which was usually ACC, and on NBC you could catch Notre Dame. So I kind of grew up watching Notre Dame a little bit, and then whatever ACC games were on. But I mean, basketball, there was always games on it. I mean, every single night of the week there was a game on. I can remember driving back from Greenville to Little Washington and listening on the radio to four overtime game between Duke and North Carolina, and just, I mean, it was who you are. And in elementary school during the ACC tournament, you didn't go to class. Like, you got to spend
Right.
the afternoons watching the ACC tournament. So, I mean, it was everything. And I think that's where I really fell in love with basketball, was those years in North Carolina. I started my high school career in North Carolina and then moved halfway between at the Christmas break of my 9th grade year to South Carolina to Somerville, and fortunately got to play for an amazing Hall of Fame coach in Teresa Kendall at Somerville. And I think she also helped really change the direction of where I was going, because she was demanding a lot. But she had a little Sylvia. She really looked up to Coach Hatchell and her years at Francis Marion, and she really whipped us into shape. That's for sure.
Coaches or players, like I like to say, a post player might have a go-to move, and then they might have a counter. Depending on reading the defense.
Yeah.
Who's sort of when you're thinking about how much you fell in love in the game as a little kid, like when you go back to when things are tough or you face some adversity, where do you find that source that makes you remind yourself that you really do love the game, that you're doing exactly what you want to be doing, even though it can be challenging at times?
Yeah. I really think it's probably thinking back to my high school coach, because I think, like I said, my parents were probably the biggest influences in my life. I was blessed to have two wonderful people raise me, but probably the third person after that I would have to say would be my high school coach. Like, she pulled things out of me that I never knew I could do. And she drove, her ways of motivation were different because it was the 90s, but she got everything out of me, and she really made me understand that I could be better than I even realized I could be. And so I think sometimes when things get hard, I think back to some of those practices that I survived, some of those 2-a-days in our unair conditioned gym on our lower campus, where you went through 4 t-shirts and thought you were going to die and you could get through it. And so I think she really instilled that in me, that when things get hard, you can quit or you can just suck it up. And I try to choose to suck it up the majority of the time.
This is the week of We Back Pat, where women's basketball celebrates the legacy of Pat Summitt. And then in another couple of weeks, we're going to have the Play for K games, and we're going to be celebrating the memory and the legacy of Kay Yao. Those two women had an indelible impression on me, and I know they did on most people that grew up in our generation. Do you have a memory, or do you have something about Pat and or Kay that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up going to Pat's camps. So I was blessed to have an aunt and uncle that lived in Knoxville. So I would get on the plane in Greenville and fly over and go to her camps. And so I can remember her being at those camps, and a lot of her players. Jody Adams was there when I was a camper. She probably won't like that I said that, but I was there with camper. And again, she reminded me a lot of my high school coach. I mean, she was tough. I can remember her running. Like, thank God I was never late. But people that were late at camp would be up at like 5 a.m. running. Like, I was like, that's not going to be me. So, she was awesome. And then Coach Yao was amazing. I think my junior high school team took a trip up and saw the game where NC State played Virginia, the 2 overtime game with Staley.
Whoa. Yeah, that's Yeah, that's a big historical moment in NC State women's basketball in the
Yeah.
ACC, honestly.
Yes, and we were there. We were in the rafter seats, but it was an awesome day of getting on the bus early and going out and seeing that. And back then you didn't see women's basketball on TV. The only games
Right.
you ever saw were maybe an NCAA tournament game. So to be able to finally see those women competing and that was really neat. So I think both of those coaches have impacted me at a very early age. And then obviously, as I got into coaching, I mean, you couldn't help but follow what Pat did and read all of her books and want to be her. And then I soon realized you kind of have to be who you are. You can't just be someone else.
And that's exactly what she would tell you if she was here. She'd tell you to do your thing. When you're not coaching, and I know you have a family, but what's something that you do to try to take your mind off it?
Um, I run, so I'm a runner. So that's what I do. That's kind of when I take me time, and that's what I do. Like, so I commit to letting myself go for at least a 10-minute run every single day, no matter how busy we are. So if I can get in longer, I will. But sometimes with between work and two kids under 7, sneaking away for 10
Yeah.
minutes is all you can get. So I've learned to watch film on the treadmill. That's also helped. I can do some scouting, watch some games, make some notes on my phone. So, but yeah, that's kind of the one thing that I really use to decompress and de-stress me as I get out and get a good run in.
I'm guessing your kids are in second or third grade, maybe first grade.
Yeah, I've got a first grader and my kindergartner. We kept back this year just with everything COVID. We wanted her to try to see if we could get her to a normal kindergarten year.
Do you make their lunch or do they buy lunch?
They're the pickiest eaters in the world, so we make them their lunch. My son now buys his lunch on Fridays because it's pizza day, so he will eat the school pizza. But
Do
he,
you
same
are you a
thing.
specialist at anything you specialize in the lunchbox?
No, I always give them a treat. They get their one more. They call it their one more thing. So um, he usually cookies or fruit snacks or some Hershey's Kisses, things like
Yeah.
that. But he's a pretty boring eater, to be quite honest. So
And I'm sure they go to the games. They enjoy going to the games. And have you been able to take them on recruiting trips or on on the road with
yeah,
you? Have you been able to do anything like that?
yeah. No, they come to all the games, all the home games for sure. They've gone on some recruiting trips. Pre-COVID, they went on almost every trip. Um, since COVID's happened, we've kind of had to back away from that. But my son got his first experience of going with me to a home game and getting to rebound for the girls, which he thought was really cool. And I will say, like his mom, he took 2 charges during that where he got himself run over. So that was kind of cute too. The girls were like, "Oh my god, I totally ran him over." I'm like, "It's okay. He's tough. It'll make him tougher. Got to take
Yeah. Well,
charges."
Mary, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's great to get a mix of family and basketball and to listen about some of your stories and some of the influences that you've had on your career.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for hitting us on the road. You're literally on the road with Mary Evans, Valparaiso.